Since March of 2020, so much has changed. How we work, how we live, the tools we use, the way we collaborate. Hello and welcome to The Bridge. Join host Scott Kinka in a series of discussions of how some of the top leaders in technology bridged their businesses, technology, roadmaps, and lives into their new hybrid work reality. Our hope is that their insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life, from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepointe Technologies, one of the nation's leading IT advisory, procurement, and lifecycle management companies. Now, here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Scott Kinka. On this episode, we meet PPT Solutions, Dennis Weikle, who's the CEO, and Scott Casson, the Senior Vice President of Delivery. Why PPT Solutions? Well, in full disclosure, Bridgepointe Technologies, as you know, the sponsor of this podcast, recently acquired PPT. PPT, which stands for People, Process, and Technology, considers themselves a CX as a service provider. That doesn't mean they're a technology service provider or a SaaS provider. In fact, it sort of means the opposite. They are a services firm that operates in and around those software as a service and platform as a service providers. They deliver consulting, implementation, and managed services around CX. Importantly, they're also a BPO or business process outsourcing broker. We'll get to what that means in a minute. Everyone is talking CX these days, like it was just invented, right? Acronym of the year. We spent some time talking about what CX is, what it isn't. We debated it. We talked about the differences between CX and CCaaS. Without spilling the beans here, CCaaS, really technology platform. CX, a business strategy. But why now? Why is it all about CX today? Is it the pandemic? The changing expectations of consumers? Is it finally now the year of the consumer? Isn't every year? Why are we constantly reinventing what we call the technologies and platforms that support our engagement with clients? I've said this several times on the pod in the past year, and I'll continue to say it. Contact center and CX implementations don't go bad because of broken tech. They go bad because of poor strategy, poor implementation, or unclear objectives. And that's really the gap that PPT Solutions, now Bridgepointe, is filling for businesses. And they give a few really good examples of that on the pod. We talked a bunch about outsourcing agents, getting back to that, what has come to be known as BPO and how in some business lines, it was taboo before the pandemic. You don't want to call and get somebody overseas. But once everyone went home, businesses realized that they needed more flexibility in staffing and costs. Businesses are questioning not only whether they need full-time staff in their contact center, but they're also looking at how technology, or in this case, the broader CX portfolio, can actually serve customers without agents, right? How do we eliminate calls coming into the contact center? Of course, we ended with our predictions section. We got some great predictions about the Bengals winning the Super Bowl. We talked about Dennis's dream of being a member of an 80s hair band. Don't miss that part. Either way, this was a great conversation and one that I hope you find as thought-provoking as I did. So let's get to it. Here we are with this episode of The Bridge.
Hi, and welcome to The Bridge. I'm your host, Scott Kinka. Today's episode is going to be a fun one for a couple of reasons. One, first time we've done this format with a couple of faces on at the same time. That's one. Two, we're being joined with some of our own, and recently some of our own. Today I have with us Dennis Weikle and Scott Casson from PPT Solutions. I'll allow them to describe their business, but in the interest of full disclosure, right before the new year, right before the holidays began, Bridgepointe Technologies, who sponsors the podcast, announced its acquisition of PPT Solutions, and we'll get into that a little bit on the podcast. But there's the full disclosure out of the way. Gentlemen, how are you? Welcome to the pod.
Doing good. Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Awesome. First off, I got to get this one out of the way. Dennis, where are you right now?
Physically, I'm in Oklahoma. Usually I'm in Florida. So,
okay. And here's the really bad part. Casson, where are you right now?
Yeah, this will make some of you sad. I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I'm not on vacation.
Where I live. Not on vacation. Well, we appreciate you getting on it. Whatever it's like not 7 a.m. there yet. something along those lines.
The
I
late
really appreciate
6:30,
that.
Scott. No problem. Thank you.
But he's already been on calls for 5 hours.
Right. Yeah,
That's
we're
amazing.
around
Well,
noontime most people's time. So
I guess that's one of the negatives to living in the sun is that you have to be on all of the time frames of the rest of us who are in gray in the Midwest and Northeast right now in the middle of all of this.
that's
Okay,
the
well,
only
fantastic.
downside, Scott.
So let's start with just a little bit about each of you. Dennis, tell us a little bit about you, your role at PPT, how long you've been there, a little bit about you personally. Who's Dennis?
So I'll be brief. A little bit about me. So been with PPT since I started the company in 2013. Obviously, just recently acquired by Bridgepointe. So super pumped about that. Have a family, wife, 2 boys, and a dog. The dog is a Belgian Malinois Dutch Shepherd mix. And she's an interesting one because her dad is a canine officer and her mom's a retired bomb dog. So she's got all sorts of energy. But that's a little bit about me. My role at PPT is managing director. There's 2 of us. I effectively focus on all the delivery functions and the day-to-day operation of the organization.
Fantastic. Scott, how about you?
Yeah. So Scott Casson, I've been with PPT since late 2019. It's been an incredible ride. As Dennis mentioned, we couldn't be more excited about joining up with the Bridgepointe team. As mentioned, I live in Hawaii. I've got 30 years experience in the CX space. Started on the phone forever ago. I think Dennis shares that same kind of early beginning. Worked in just every job in the contact center space up to becoming a consultant. I've been doing this for about 15 years. My role at PPT is delivery, which is inclusive of our consulting team, and we've got a integration and implementation team and managed services team, which we'll probably get into a little bit more as we go. As just for me, got a family, a couple dogs, as Dennis mentioned. I've got a couple of labradoodles, so excited to kind of move forward here, and it's great to meet everybody.
You've been in Honolulu since when?
About 15 years, Scott. It's a short story. I came out here on a project, and I met my wife here, and the rest is history. So.
Well, that's the way to do it if you're going to do it. You hear those stories all the time. I went there. I decided I wasn't coming back. I sent for my things. That would probably be what happened if I ended up in Honolulu on a project with you.
Except for flying in and out every week, right? For customers. So outside of that, I'm here. So.
I love it. Dennis, tell us about PPT.
So I think the best way to think about PPT is, we're really customer experience as a service. And you hear the word as a service, and that draws the connotation of, oh, you're a software company. We're not a software company. We're not trying to be a software company. And then the next thing is, well, does that mean you're a BPO? And the answer to that is, no, we're not. We're not a BPO, and we're not trying to be a BPO. What we are is a group of consultants, for lack of a better term, that have extremely deep expertise in the CX domain. We have folks that have spent their careers, their lives focused in the operational side of call centers. They've spent time at some of the bigger firms, whether that's Accenture, Deloitte, McKinsey, so on and so forth. And they've also, in many cases, ran and owned a P&L. So they've got this diversity of experience that you just don't commonly find. Same thing on the tech side. So as if you look at our guys and gals that consult on the tech side, they have a similar makeup, but on the technical side. So they've spent time at bigger firms, and often, in many cases, and in most cases, they've owned their own P&Ls. They've been responsible for the delivery of the technology that enables call centers and customer experience and storefronts and so on and so forth. And then, as Casson mentioned, right, we've got, and I mean this in the most passionate and loving way, we got the wrench turners, the folks that understand these platforms and the technology at an intimate level, work with clients to implement them, and importantly, get the value they thought they were going to get when they made the decision to move from prem to cloud or implement artificial intelligence, et cetera. And then our last piece of our business is really our managed services team. They put the wrapper around it and really make sure that as clients move through that transition from prem to cloud and they begin to take advantage of some of these advanced technologies, we're right there in the trenches side by side with them, managing it day to day and helping their teams.
Gotcha. Fantastic. So let's take one step back from a definition perspective. Casson, you said CX. Um, you both said CX, but you did a good job sort of explaining it a minute or two ago. Let me define it. I mean, we use acronyms like water around here. And CX is fairly recent. I mean, let's call it what it is. We sort of taken the step up from CC or CCaaS. We've run other things into it. Just define CX for the listeners right now as you see it, Scott.
Yeah, it's a great question, Scott. So I mean, I think it hasn't been that long ago, even for example, that we used to just say, the call center, right? And then all of a sudden we started to call it the contact center, and it was almost the evolution of technology to some extent, right? Because in the old days we just had the phone, and then we had email, and then we had chat, and we had all this other technology. So you see the evolution just from the call center to the contact center. Now we're in this world, we're calling it CX, right? Because it's everything in and around it. It's not just the contact center now. It's not just the people sitting in maybe a building of what we call bricks and mortar, taking in customer interactions. We're at home now. We're doing all kinds of stuff, right? Everybody's involved in that. Technology has driven that for us. It's allowed us to think of the customer more than just a single interaction, but more of just the entire experience with them, right? From the time that we speak first to them, maybe we enroll them as a customer, to support them through a sales process, to support them through a service process, to try to add on and enrich them and add value. Customer experience is in and around everything we do with the people that we're in business to serve. And again, it's become a very broad term. As Dennis mentions, that it's as a service. It's not just technology. Technology has to be married with operations, has to be married with metrics, has to be married with all kinds of different things. So it's become very broad, and it's become a point of emphasis for customers, right, and a point of competition. So again, it's kind of largely defined now, the way we've thought about it and gone after it as a business.
And the thing I would just add to that, if it's okay, Scott, is
please.
If you think about all the things that Casson just referenced, it's a highly complex landscape of solutions. And frankly, all those solutions are not all created equal. Some are better than others. And that's a little fluid depending on what a client's needs and requirements are. When you think about what we do, right, is we help simplify the complex. We work with and are intimately familiar with all these BPOs, all the tech suppliers, and we're able to help these clients rapidly identify the right solution, implement that solution, and then manage it long term.
Makes perfect sense. If I think of my personal experience, I'm somebody who spent a lot of my life in some form of telephony, but if I'm seeking service, I do everything I can to not have to speak to a human, right?
Absolutely.
So if I have to make this super simple, sort of going, Casson, using your description, call to contact to CX. CX now sort of covers all the other ways to not get a call to the call center, the IVRs, the AI, the enrollment experience, the applications that are associated with it. Those are very business oriented conversations, less technology. I assume, to Dennis, sort of what you were sharing about the people that you have in the business. That's why these are not just wrench turners, affectionately shared. I appreciate you saying that, but also the business owners, right? Because the deployment of those surrounding technologies are really about business outcomes. Did I have that right?
Absolutely. 100%.
And Scott, if you don't mind, I'll just jump in on that a little bit.
Yeah,
like if we go back 5 years ago, we everyone probably knows what an IVR is, right? And it had a bad name because, we talk about this thing, customer effort, right? The customer effort and the fluidity and engaging with the middle model of the customer made it so you probably wanted to speak to somebody. But to your point, nobody actually wants to talk to someone, provided they can get the service that they need from and the automation that they need. And it's right, and it's easy, and it's logical to them, right? So that's some of the advances that we've made, right? And that's the evolution of technology, again, married with the understanding of the customer, the operation, how that all works. And again, that's what's really exciting right now about the industry that we're working in and the technology that we have. But you never can lose the human and the operational side of it. And I believe that's where we've been really helpful with our customers.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I have, you're both aware, but for the sake of the listenership, I'll explain. I've got a history as a CTO in a UCaaS and CCaaS company, wrote a product that ended up in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, hundreds of clients on it. And I used to say to our people when we were selling, maybe it wasn't always the case. I'm sure we broke a few eggs here or there, but for the most part, if a CCaaS, if we're talking about contact center specifically, if a CCaaS implementation goes poorly, it's generally not because technology is broken. Is it a fair way to say that that's the gap that you fill?
You want to take that one,
Yeah,
Cass?
I'll start if you don't mind, Dennis.
Sure.
Scott, 100%, 100%. We have a product that we call Rapid Assessment, and it was simply built for the exact reason that you talked about. These platforms and these solutions, they're fantastic, right? All of them are they're really good. There's some nuances about them, but the technology is really, really good, right? But how they're configured and how they're configured specifically for the needs of the business is whether or not that product is actually going to work. The technology is not going to fail. It's going to be how the configuration works and whether or not it's configured to meet the needs and the requirements of the business. It seems so easy, but we move so quickly. Like when a customer is ready to go prem to cloud, for example, it's like they're ready and they just want to get there fast. And the platform providers want to get them there fast, but it's kind of like we're always like, guys, let's hold up just for a minute. Let's design this thing right first, and then you'll get what you want out of it, right? And then you'll get on evolution. So what you said, I agree passionately about. That's exactly right, that we got to do that up front. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also in some cases from the customer perspective. If you're a decision maker who's been through this, listening to this today, sometimes we unfairly think that the service provider is in the business of making us good users, and it's business decisions that go into implementation. I mean, I've said to customers, I'm like, listen, just because you bought a car doesn't mean I have to teach you how to drive it. I mean, you understand where the edges are in that process. That's what got me so excited about the prospect of PPT Solutions coming together with Bridgepointe. Let me just tie this a little bit into some of the other conversations that we've been having. So as you know, on the podcast, we've spoken, our listeners are business leaders, they are IT leaders, and you guys are business and IT leaders yourselves, right? Despite the fact that you're deploying technology that in some ways, in a lot of ways is helping businesses cope with sort of their new reality. We've done a lot of talking about the pandemic, a pandemic that we're beyond now, but we're talking about, what have sort of been the indelible changes in the way that we do business sort of since then. So as business, owners and as business leaders, just quickly, the day that it happened, right? I always say, take us to the room where it happened, take March, I don't know, it was like St. Patty's week, 2020, right? When was the moment y'all got on a call and you were like, wow, okay, this is something, and you had to do something different as business leaders, and sort of what did you transition to? How did you transition? Give us a little bit of a story about that.
Yeah, I'll start, and Casson, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second just to add some here. But it was in March 2020, if memory serves. We had a team of, I don't remember exactly how many consultants, but call it 7 groups of people scattered around the globe, helping deploy about 5,000 agents for a particular client on the BPO side. And in parallel, we were deploying some technology solutions as well. And literally overnight, we had to jump on a bridge, figure out how to get people home. And importantly, we were talking with the client about potentially delaying their launch. And for them, it was just an unequivocal no. Like they just could not do it. So, Casson, you'll keep me honest on the timeline, but if memory serves, inside of 4 weeks, we had to figure out. And by the way, some of these agents were in extremely remote locations that aren't known for good infrastructure. We had to figure out how to take 5,000 people from brick and mortar centers inside of 30 days and put them in homes.
Yeah.
And we were able to successfully do that. I think one of the things that allowed us to think and move rapidly, we were born as a virtual company. Like we weren't confined to the normal ways of thinking about business. So we were already mentally in that mode, but helping clients rapidly get there, identify the tech solutions that enabled it, but also importantly had the security around it that they needed to deploy their business and run it. It was, I'd be remiss not to say it was challenging for sure, but super rewarding for everybody that went on that journey and had to go on that journey. Casson, what did I miss? Is there anything that you'd add to that?
I mean, Dennis, I think you nailed it. I mean, well, it's almost hard to think about the pre-pandemic state, I think, for us now, right?
Right?
Because pre-pandemic, this particular engagement that Dennis referred to was big, and work at home, I'd almost say was taboo prior to that March 2020 date that Dennis references. People were dabbling in it, but these 5,000 agents that Dennis referenced that we were deploying, 2% of those, I remember the number, 2% of those are going to work from home. And the client, big global brand, didn't even want 2%. And then all of a sudden, we needed 100% of them at home, and it had to be fast.
Okay.
And not only did we have to get them there, we had to figure out not just the technology, but how to manage them, motivate them, work with them, get the most out of them, right? Make sure that invoicing was correct, anything and everything. And it changed in a month, to Dennis's point. And then when the smoke cleared, we had to figure out how to actually do it well. So it was such an interesting time for BPO, for W-2 contact centers, company that run their own, and will never be the same, right? So just that on.
Well, that's an interesting one. I was going to ask, and I had my next question prepped. You beat me to it, which is good because I can ask the next one. But what the 5,000 seats you were implementing were not intended to be at home at that point.
Yeah, that's right. So, and Scott, Dennis made an important point. Some of these things were in Northern Africa. They didn't have a work at home infrastructure, right? So the world just wasn't quite ready. So, I mean, you're obviously thinking about risk and risk mitigation for a big deployment, but all of that had to come quickly, right? And now we're so much better as a society and an industry, I believe, because of what happened in and around there.
I mean, it certainly provides flexibility in terms of, how to staff these CX initiatives. Has that model changed, not just in terms of location, but in terms of, sourcing of that staff since the pandemic? Dennis, on our pre-call, you were talking to, quite a bit about BPO and BPO growth since the pandemic. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. It's absolutely changed where these folks are being sourced from. It's also, I think the pandemic opened people's eyes to doing more outsourcing work. And importantly, doing it with the right partners and suppliers that enable success. BPO, and this is just my opinion, I think they get a bad rap, right? We've all called the call center and had a horrible experience. But it's just like technology, right? Getting really open and honest with yourself as a client about what you're trying to accomplish, what's most important to you, what are your requirements, and then working with someone like PPT to go find and source the right suppliers. And importantly, we've got a product and a package we do around the implementation of those, and it helps ensure the success. It makes a world of difference, and people are outsourcing more these days than ever. And, I hate to talk about it, but I think it's real. Like, there's a potential recession coming. Some people would argue we're in a recession. Regardless of where you fall on that line, more and more clients are actively talking to us about it. And it's an important piece for 2023 for a lot of our clients.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, Scott, I'll add on there. You mentioned just kind of...
Scott, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you had mentioned like just hiring and recruiting and things like that. I'm kind of glancing off to the side. We got a slide that we built. I mean, when we went here, we decided we needed to kind of create a set of best practices, right, about work at home and these models, because it was here and it wasn't going away. But if you think about just recruiting and hiring, the profile of the person changed, right? The ability of someone to actually sit at their house, be motivated and able to actually be disciplined enough to do that changed, right? The way we recruit, the way we hire, the way we test, people to actually make sure they can do this. Their environment, right? Environmentally, do they have the bandwidth? Silly stuff that we never thought about. All of that really became something important. And then I can't emphasize it enough. Employee engagement and collaboration. A whole new world of technology had to be created, right? So that we could do what we're doing right now. We could feel like we're in the same room. We can motivate it. We can feel like we're a part of the Ohana and our team. Those things, I mean, who expected it, right? But those things all came as a result, to your point. So,
I mean, it's come up a couple of times in the pod. Imagine where we'd be had we not had the technological advances over the last handful of years to be able to enable us to do that. When I was on our last episode with Sanjay Srinivasan, who is one of the innovators at Vonage, came from the Simple Signal acquisition. We were laughing about how years ago we would be at the BroadSoft conference and we'd be like, this is the year of video this year, we promise, right? And then here we are, we went from, is it going to happen this year to, Marty McFly, right? Everybody's, we don't even call people now for what could be a 5-minute call because we have to have a half-hour Zoom, or a half-hour Teams meeting to do it. There's some reflects back on that. We could keep going, and I commit to our listeners that we will. There's a lot more to this conversation, and I'm thinking, out loud right now about perhaps some conversations where we can maybe engage some of your team, maybe even with some of our technology suppliers on some of the implementations that we've done who've been, really good guests on the podcast so far. So I'm committing to that here right in the middle of the pod. We're going to potentially do some of that this year. But with 5 minutes left, let's have a little bit of fun. This is about getting to know you guys. First one, we'll step down from the tech. I'll throw it at Dennis first. How about a shameless prediction for the next 18 to 24 months? If you want to keep it to tech, great. But throw it out there, whatever you got.
Shameless prediction for the next 18 months. I'm gonna keep this one to tech because I think I should.
Okay.
Not to be too serious here. I think the cloud adoption, it's been accelerating for a long time. People are talking about how much it's accelerating coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think they're wrong. And what I mean by that is I think it's going to be even faster.
Okay.
Than what people are predicting. I think the age of premise-based solutions, does it completely go away? Who knows? There's a lot of talk about that, but I think the migration is going to increase at a sharper curve than it's even predicted at this point.
I mean, look, when the entire idea of premises changed really since the pandemic. Speaking about those indelible things that haven't changed, that's a good one. Scott, did you want to add something on there, or you're gonna line up with Dennis on his prediction?
You know what? I definitely agree with Dennis. There's no question.
Yeah.
But since you said we could go outside of tech and business, Scott, I'm going to predict I'm a big football fan, right? I'm going to predict the Cincinnati Bengals will win the Super Bowl in the next.
I knew that was coming.
Then I've got another question coming your way in a minute, but I have one in between. So we had a little bit of pandemic talk here. I think we all have this thought in our mind now of what life could be. We have a feeling about what life could be like when some of our institutions crumble. So let's just assume something occurs. You can be dramatic about it or funny about it. Planet of the Apes style apocalypse, whatever it is that you want, but you've got one app left on your phone. Casson, what's it going to be for you?
Oh boy. So you're going to tell me I can't keep ESPN because there's not going to be any.
If the Bengals aren't playing, what reason would you need?
That's a tough one. Shoot. Boy, I don't know. Maybe I'd still keep ESPN and watch old games. How about that, Scott?
Okay. All right. That'll keep you busy. A really good one that we had a couple weeks ago was a book reader. They're like, if nobody's doing anything, I don't need any of the other apps, but I certainly need something to do. I don't know, Dennis, you got a favorite app you couldn't live without? If the rest of the world
I know you said one, but I got to go with two. I got to have FaceTime so I can see my family just in case we're not together for some odd reason.
Fair.
And two, I got to have Angry Birds.
That's the first time we heard that. You don't even need to describe it any more than that. We'll just stop there and let everybody fill in the blanks. All right, last one. We got 2 minutes left. Dennis, I'm going to throw this one at you, and then Casson, if you want to jump on quick with a couple minutes we have left, great. But I'm going to give you a choice. They're all supporting roles. That was really the secret behind this question. You get to choose to either be the bass player in your favorite band. You get to be the supporting actor in your favorite movie, or you get to be like the third down gadget guy who just comes out for 6, 8, 10 plays a game for your favorite, football team. So what's your choice there, Dennis? What do you want to be?
So I'm going to go with the band because most people are shocked when I say this. Casson, do you know my favorite band?
I do. Do you want me to say it, Dennis?
Sure.
Yeah. How about Motley Crue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be the bass player in Motley Crue. I called him up, and I just didn't have enough tattoos and piercings and things, and frankly, I can't play a bass guitar, so that kind of killed the whole dream. But that's what I would do.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, you have the look, so you just need to learn how to play the bass now. You're like right there.
It's close. It's close.
So close.
So
Casson,
close.
you have an answer? You're going to be the scout back on the Cincinnati bet. We already know the answer.
I'm leaving it alone. Yeah, no, that was too good.
Well, fantastic. This was a brisk and insightful 29 minutes or wherever that's going to land. We certainly have more conversations to have. But first off, really happy to have the PPT Solutions team in the Ohana with Bridgepointe. Really excited about that. I'm glad that we could get the message out quickly to our listenership that's building, episode by episode on the bridge. And we're excited that you all, if you took the time, are with us listening to this episode. So for Dennis, for Scott, for myself, Scott Kinka, and the teams at Bridgepointe and PPT, we're thrilled that you listened to this episode of The Bridge, and we'll catch you on another episode.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we are appreciative of Bridgepointe Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have that resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepointe, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out Bridgepointe at bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepointe, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also, take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It gives us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I am Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there. In business and in life, do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.